for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche And after 22 years, Raymond Mark!
The sickest NHL podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network. He's Pierre McGuire. I'm Jimmy Murphy. And just a great weekend of hockey, Pierre, whether it was NHL or NCAA, just great games all around. And I hope everybody out there had a happy Easter as well. Pierre, let's stay in the college level since we talked a lot about that heading into the weekend with the regional finals this weekend. Any surprises to you? I was a bit surprised, but you kind of hinted that maybe they would come out on top, but I was a bit surprised by Michigan. How about you?
Total team effort. I have so much respect for how they were coached, how they played, what they were able to do. Obviously a really tough regional. That was an amazingly difficult regional. With Western Michigan in there, with Michigan State, that just North Dakota, that was a barbaric regional. That being said, Michigan showed a lot. They showed a lot, Jimmy. I remember telling you the other day, they don't have a lot of star power. They got players that are going to play in the NHL, but they don't have anybody like Adam Fantilli. They just don't. But I will give you an example. If you watch the play that Frankie Nazar makes last night, through his legs, through the coverage, over to Gavin Brindley, who puts it to the back of the net, you don't see that from too many players in the world. And that's at a high rate of speed. That was just a spectacular play. But, I'm watching how the coach is deploying Keenan Draper, Chris Draper's son, who wears the same number as Chris, number 33. Quick, hard shifts, big face-offs, penalty kill situations, forecheck situations. We don't need you for offense, son. So it's an example of how they're playing their game. It's all about team. So Michigan really impressed me. I will say this, and I mean no disrespect to any of the teams that moved on. Quinnipiac deserved a better fate.
They did.
Quinnipiac deserved a better fate. They really did. And another team that I think deserved a better fate was Cornell. I think Cornell deserved a better fate. That's not to take anything away from Denver, who beat them, and that's not to take anything away from Boston College, who on paper, they have the best team. And Greg Brown's a tremendous coach. His staff does a great job, phenomenal job. That being said, anybody that watched that game knows that game was decided by probably special teams and penalties in particular.
And some luck.
But you sometimes, you
make your own luck. You make your own luck.
But I will just say, this has been a great tournament.
It really has.
There were a lot of people knocking it at the beginning, saying, well, this team should have been or that team should have been. If you go back to the double overtime game that UMass lost to Denver, that got this whole tournament started.
Yeah. And
it's been phenomenal. Jimmy,
6 overtime games. Yeah, it's been amazing, Pierre. I want to just say, too, on that game, with Quinnipiac and Boston College as well, we spoke about it. I think it was Friday. We were talking about Greg Brown and how calm he is all the time. I'm just going to start calling him Ice Cold. All right. Like Ice Cold Brownie. That's his new name, because I don't know if it just every time they went over to him on the bench or they're talking to him where they just panned in on him with the camera and the game's tight, or his team had just given up a goal that could have decided, could have been the game-winning goal, or even in overtime. When they scored, he showed no emotion. Now, I think he was trying to make sure it was a legit goal because they were reviewing it. But even when he found out that they had won, he was just like, okay. He went over, shook the coach's hands, and he said, on to the next one. He is just ice cold, and I love it. And that's got to be so calming on that bench for the Boston College Eagles, Pierre.
Well, with all those young players, that helps. Yeah. You got young guys, too, because there's not a lot of veterans they can turn to, except the guy that scored the overtime winner, Jack Malone, who's a graduate student who I watched play for 3 years at Cornell. 3 years at Cornell before he moved on to Boston College, where I've watched him this whole year as a graduate student, a former pick of the Vancouver Canucks. He's had a tremendous playoff. He had a great year at Boston College. He really insulated, Will Smith, and he really insulated Cutter Gauthier when he was playing as a number 3 center. I think Jack's had a phenomenal year. Good for him. When kids leave schools, and in this case it was as a graduate student, you always want them to do well. There's always that sense of the unknown. Is it going to work out for this guy here? Or is it going to? But I think when Greg Brown and his staff brought him into Boston College, they knew exactly where he fit on their team. And I think it played out really well.
Yeah, and he was a guy too, Pierre. If you remember on Friday, I mentioned him too. I just loved his hustle. Even in a game where they were up, I think, by 2 or 3 goals at the time, he's just motoring down the wing, hustling after that puck and beating out an icing call. So good for him. BU, that was an interesting one there. You know, they come out, they fall behind 2-0, and then it was just, you know, the floodgates opened and their talent and skill took over. But, you know, I want to give, I think one of the coaches we haven't talked about a lot, and we've had him on this show, is Boston University's head coach, Jay Pandolfo. And I give him a lot of credit, Pierre, because I think, you know, like Boston College, like Brownie with the Eagles there, he's got a young squad as well. And at this time of year, that can be tough to manage, keeping emotions in check. And I thought he did a great job when they fell behind 2-0 of keeping them focused on their plan and sticking within their plan, what they came into this game to do, and not veering away from it, which is so easy to do when you're a young player, you know, especially in an emotional game like that. So credit to his coaching as well. I just, you know, it's setting up here as a great Frozen Four. I'm really excited.
It's all the Blue Bloods. You know, I heard them saying this on the coverage. The Blue Bloods are playing, and so you think about the tradition, the legacy of BU, the tradition and legacy of BC, the unbelievable tradition and legacy of you know, obviously University of Michigan and Denver. I mean, Denver is just, they're called the Pioneers for a reason. They really are pioneers. And, you know, one of the great Denver people that I had a chance to work for is Craig Patrick. And he's just a really proud Denver Pioneer. And he used to tell stories all the time about all the great players that have been through that program. And you know what? He's right. And you work closely with a guy that was a coach at Denver that won a national championship, and Jimmy Montgomery. I think David Carl's done a fantastic job. That he had 2 really tough games. You know, probably didn't deserve to beat Mass, but they did. They did. And, you know, probably didn't deserve to beat Cornell, but they did. And Matt Davis, the goalie, deserves a ton of credit. Guy played out of his mind, played great. And a lot of people thought Jimmy, and we talked about him when we were up in at the MGM at TAP. You know, the question will be, does Denver have enough in goal? Yeah. And you know what? They did have enough in goal.
Yeah, they did.
That was the question. So now you can't ask that question anymore.
No.
And I don't mean you. I mean, people can't say, does Denver have enough in goal? Yeah, they do. They do. Davis was tremendous. He really was.
Yeah, they've proven that they do. Pierre, another thing that, of course, has happened a lot in the last 5 days is just whether it's NCAA free agents, you know, leaving, or drafted players that decide to forgo, you know, the rest of their college career. And now, of course, yesterday, the transfer portal starts up. You know, I was thinking about that as some, you know, at the end of these games and watching some of these games, especially the ones that go to overtime and eliminate a team. And I'm thinking about these kids sitting on the ice there. And you know, I don't think people realize it when they're watching it, but sometimes, I guess, just covering the game for so long, Pierre, and being around it, whether it's at the pro or college level, I'm just thinking about what it's like for those kids who, you know they're sitting there on the ice and they're saying, this is it. I'm never going to be with this group again. And you're seeing that more often now, Pierre, just because of the landscape with the free agency and with the transfer portal. What goes through your mind? You know, like when you're seeing the Quinnipiac players there, that goalie, Duplace, he played such a great game, to have it go in like that. And then they're just sitting there on the ice, dejected. And I'm just like, it must be a more empty feeling. It's always an empty feeling, right? But I feel like it's even more so now because there's just so many variables that immediately occur once you're eliminated.
I'll give you an example. It's not even a guy that's NHL bound. TJ McGee, I played with his uncles. I know his father unbelievably well. They're a tremendous hockey family. These are firefighters from New York, tough people, great people, salt of the earth people. And I, you know, obviously watched my son play against TJ for 3 years now. And it's, you know, you watch that and you go, I'm watching the poor kid's reaction on the ice. He's a man. He's 23 or 24 years of age. But you watch that and you go, that's probably his last meaningful game. Yeah. I'm watching that and you have compassion for the player, you know, and I'm watching, you know, all their great players, you know, for Quinnipiac. You have to wonder how many of them will actually be back, how many are going to turn pro. I got to think that Jacob Quillen's going to be signed by somebody. You've been one of the first people on that name. You've been very, very forthright in terms of where you think he might sign. And I think you're not wrong. I think you're absolutely right. So, that's just an example where guys are going to end up going, but it's not easy. Obviously, it's really tough to watch.
It was a perfect example. I'm watching that BC Quinnipiac game, and my girlfriend Monica, she had Boston College in our bracket, so she's cheering for Boston College there. and right as she starts to cheer when the overtime goal went in, she's just goes complete 180 in her emotion. She goes, "Oh my God, I feel so bad for that goalie." And she starts just really getting emotional for him and saying, I can't be happy while this guy's sitting there dejected like that. So just, watch that. I urge the fans, that's how great this tournament is. It's just the emotion swings and what it means to these players, and realize too that, when it's not like they're pros and they're going to come back next year with the same team. A lot of these kids are moving on. And like you said, there's also players, like you just pointed out, this is it, and that's a tough pill to swallow. So I keep them in my mind, especially as we go forward here in the Frozen Four. Yeah. Pierre, I want to switch to pro hockey here. And, one thing I think we have been sort of watching we have been in the standings, is how the Philadelphia Flyers were dropping and dropping and dropping. And you wake up today and there they are. They're in the second wild card spot after being in the third slot in the Metro Division for essentially the whole season. And, it's got to be tough right now, because I feel like the Flyers, when I watch them play right now, it's one of these, you got that train wreck and you're watching it happen. You can't stop it. That's what it feels like to me with the Flyers. What do they have to do right now to reel it in and realize this is getting worse and worse? And if we don't stop, Detroit could surpass us and we're out of the playoffs. What do they got to do right now to reel it in, Pierre?
Guys have to find some energy. They play the Islanders tonight. Tonight's a big night for a bunch of teams. They play the Islanders tonight. Now, the good news is they're in Philly. The bad news is this is last call for the Islanders too. So Philadelphia's going to play against a team that's going to bring a Game 7 tonight.
Yep.
You got to be ready for that. And that's not easy to do. I think they're lacking energy, talking about Philadelphia. I think most of their guys have had to overachieve for a long period of time this year. I look at some of the defensemen in particular. Now, I don't know if Drysdale's playing tonight or not. That would help them if he could come back and play at 100%. But they need some help on the back end. And I don't think Konechny's 100%. And, everybody was all mad that Couturier was a healthy scratch. But have you watched them play? I feel bad. And I told you this, Jimmy.
Yeah, we love him.
Couturier, I'm convinced he's not 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been watching that kid play for a long time. Go back to the 2009 World Junior camps. Go back to all these different camps. I've seen that kid play for a very long period of time, or 2010 World Junior camp. And then he played in 2011 in Buffalo. But I'm just telling you, he doesn't look right.
He's not keeping up with the pace right now.
No, so it's not just him.
That's his strength.
I think there's something. I don't think Konechny's 100%. He's a tough kid. You know that. And he's undersized, and he's been hurt for a little while now, but I don't think he's 100%. So they've had to deal with that. I feel bad for John, but nobody feels bad for him in the NHL. It's just
exactly.
That's why internal depth, drafting well, cultivating your players well, and coaching the right way in the NHL matters a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And they're going to look, you said something there. They have overachieved. They know that. We know that. But do you, as a coach, as a coaching staff, do you try to get them to understand, okay, you overachieved, but guess what? You're here. So you did get here. You might have done it, unexpectedly. And a lot of people didn't plan on you being here in a playoff spot and in this spot this late in the season, but you earned this. You got this. Do you try to convey that to them? Be like, don't let people just say, oh, well, hey, it was a great run. You did better than everyone thought. How do you convey to them that, hey, you guys earned this. You deserve to be here?
Yeah, that's where I think John passes the reins to a guy like Couturier, to a guy like Mark Stahl. There's a reason why they brought Mark Stahl in. Because one, he knows how to deal with John Tortorella because he played for him in New York. And two, he's been through a lot of, he's been to a Stanley Cup final with the Rangers. He's been through a lot. He's won a World Junior gold medal. He's been through a lot, Mark Stahl. He's a really experienced, honorable person and a great leader. So you rely on those players. Those are the guys. When the room polices itself and there's great peer pressure in the room, it usually is better than when a coach is yelling and screaming.
Yeah,
It's usually a lot better.
Pierre, I'm looking at some of the games tonight too. You already mentioned that one, that Flyers game.
Oh, Pitt and Rangers.
That's where I was just going to go. And look, Pitt, we're not making any qualms here. I mean, then the chance of them making it very slim right now. But they're just so unpredictable, Pierre. And I don't know how to read this game. The Rangers are back off a little road trip there. It's just every game I look at when the Penguins are in, and I'm trying to really analyze it. I can't, because I really don't know what Penguins team is going to show up. And it's crazy to say that here on April 1st, but it's the truth. I mean, you just don't know this late in the season with them. At the Rangers, though, they need this win. They need to keep this up if they want to secure that top spot in the East and maybe even overall in the league. So it's an important game for them. They need to come out and I think really set the tempo right off the get-go here and not overlook a Penguins team that I think by now some teams naturally do overlook because of where they are in the standings, Pierre.
The thing for Pittsburgh is they know that last call is coming. Tonight's probably the first part of last call. Then they play in New Jersey tomorrow, which isn't going to be easy for them tomorrow either, because that'll be last call for the Devils. So they're faced with a team, one like the Rangers, that needs to win, coming off a pretty successful trip when they go into Arizona and win big, and they go into Colorado and win in a shootout. So there's some things there, but not an easy way to handicap the Pittsburgh Penguins, just because I think the expectation was a lot higher from the new management team. And I don't think they've met the expectation of the new management team, especially after they went out and got Erik Karlsson. But one player that I really think, besides Sidney Crosby, who's been magnificent all season long, he really has been.
He really has.
How about Drew O'Connor?
Yeah.
A kid out of Dartmouth that nobody drafted. I can tell you this, to be fair, I know the Boston Bruins really wanted to sign him, and there were probably a whack of other teams that wanted to sign him. Mm-hmm. Pittsburgh gets him, and you know what? He's really coming. Like, he's going to be a tremendous player in the league.
Oh, yeah. I mean, remember earlier in the season, Malkin was really raving about him. He was really impressed, and that's coming from a veteran, very skilled veteran that's been in the league for a while now. So when he's throwing high praise at you, you're doing something right. Pierre, just coming across the wire here on social media, I just want to mention it before we go on with more pro talk. Well, it's still connected to the pros. Mark Diver, who's a great college and AHL reporter out of Providence, reporting that he's hearing that the Bruins could be close to signing Minnesota captain Jackson Nelson. What can you tell us about the 6'4", 220-pound center, Pierre, out of Minnesota?
He had a tremendous tournament. He's a big body. He can get to the net. He can cause some havoc. And I think the biggest thing is you talked about the size. He's not going to be intimidated or overwhelmed by the size. So I think that is obviously a big thing. It's a huge thing. No pun intended. Because I know you're the wordsmith here, but I will say no pun intended.
I love puns.
So no, he's a good player. I don't think he starts in the NHL right away.
Okay.
But you never know. One never knows.
Speaking of size there, you're kind of seeing a common thread, whether it's through trades or free agency, and now NCAA free agency. Don Sweeney and his crew seem to be really shifting gears. For a while, they got a lot of small, fast, crafty guys. They seem to be really honed in on bringing in some size and grit to their lineup.
You know why?
AHL or Bruins, too.
Do you know why? They have a very good memory. Donnie's a really smart guy. St. Paul's School and then Harvard. Mm-hmm. And what he remembers really well is what happened to them last year with the Florida Panthers.
Exactly.
The sandpaper of Florida was not fun for them to play against.
Hey, that goes back, though, further, Pierre. This has been a recurring thing. I mean, let's go back to 2019. And when they lost to the Blues, that size and grit really beat them up in that series.
They should have. I will say this in defense of that Bruins team, and I don't care who wins or loses, but I'm going to defend those guys. That team should have won.
Yeah,
one player won that Game 7, and that was Jordan Binnington.
Yeah.
I defy anybody. You can be the biggest St. Louis fan, or you could be so mad at Tuukka Rask.
Yep.
Go watch the first period of that game And you tell me how that score
That's
is
it.
in favor of St. Louis.
Yeah.
Come on.
And it was a mental block after that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
When Marchand let Pietrangelo go at the end of the first period, and then puck ends up in the back of the net, like that's 5 years ago, Jimmy. I still remember it clear as day.
I remember. He remembers it too.
And all I'll say is that's a swing play in the thing, but watch all the saves that Binnington makes. Like in that first period, it was crazy in game. So I'm prepared to give that team like a little bit of a mulligan.
Fair enough.
Not last year's team.
Okay. And how about the teams that lost to Tampa Bay and to the Islanders? Similar type teams beat them there as well, right?
Similar.
Yeah.
The one thing with Tampa, that's when they had their guys that were grinding. You know that. I don't have to tell you.
One of them's a Bruin now, practiced today.
Patrick Maroon, yeah.
Yep.
But the other part is, if you go back to the Islanders, when they have the identity line, when they have Clutterbuck and they have Cizikas and they have Martin, it's different. Now those guys are older now. They're not going to be, good chance they're not going to be in the playoffs. So you see, that's a hard thing to do. So if you're going to try to play that style, you got to keep loading up. Jimmy, you and I talked about it, and this is for the viewers and listeners.
Yep.
Saturday afternoon, I watched hockey all weekend. Besides going to the gym, all I did the whole weekend. And I'm watching Detroit and I'm watching Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We talked about Sam Bennett going after Hampus Lindholm. Watch Sam Bennett in that game.
Oh, yeah.
Against Detroit. He was running roughshod over people.
He's running roughshod
over people. Yeah. Like, I know there's probably a little bad blood between Detroit and Florida. I get it because they're in the same division, all that. Florida took that stuff personal the other day. Like they went after them.
They did. And you know what, Pierre, another guy that you've been calling to maybe, find his game a little more, and he's just still seems a bit lost out there, is Seider. And he had another rough game there, Pierre. They got to do so. I'll tell our listeners and viewers right now. I mean, we were texting about him over the weekend, and we agree. I mean, they got to find a guy in the off season to bring in, or maybe they already have him in their system. Maybe he's already in the team. Who knows? But they need to find somebody to just kind of be a mentor to him a bit. Just bring him along. You've got the skill, kid, but these are all the other things that you need to do to really accentuate that skill and really utilize it. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing in the offseason to see how Stevie Y handles that situation, because he is so key to the future of that team.
Well, here's what I will tell you. I would never doubt anything Yzerman does.
I don't either. And I'm sure he's thinking this already.
I'm being Captain Obvious here.
Yep.
That guy's a hockey man. Like, I know he's made a whack of money. I get it. I know he's been to the top of the mountain a bunch of times, both as a player and a management person. I get it. The Olympics 2010 was Jimmy, trust me, I was there. I keep telling you, that was the most magical. For those of us that had the privilege of being involved in that, that was magical. 2010 Olympics, it's going to be hard for anybody to ever replicate that. I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
And Yzerman was the major domo. Like, he was the guy. And that's how he got the Tampa job. People forget that. He got the Tampa job because of the job he did with the Olympics, not because of the job he did with Detroit. They were coming off a Stanley Cup loss in 2009 to Pittsburgh in a Game 7 in Detroit. So all I'll say is I never doubt what Yzerman does. I have so much respect for him. So much respect for him as a hockey professional. And he, most guys get out of the game and they want to be right at the top. He learned from Jimmy Devellano. He learned from Kenny Holland. And look at, he and Scotty Bowman didn't always get along. They didn't agree on everything, but he learned a lot from Scotty. I'll tell you that right now. And he worked and he worked and finally he got his opportunity. But when he got it, he was ready.
Pierre, I'm not sure. I think I've told you this story off air, but I'll tell it right now because it's one of my proudest moments as a reporter. So 2010, when he's, the GM for Canada there, and he's scouting players heading in there. Early in the season, he comes in and he's scouting. He ends up sitting next to me in the press box. Now, of course, I've told this to everyone here that I grew up a Red Wings fan, and the main reason was because Steve Yzerman was one of my favorite players as a youngster. So anyhow, he's sitting next to me. And he just turns to me and he says, so tell me everything you know about Patrice Bergeron. And tell me things that I'm not going to see on TV. I'm not going to know, not being here as much as you are watching him. I said, I'm just a reporter. He goes, so you got eyes, right? You write on hockey. You're watching this guy all the time. Tell me things I won't know. And so we just went in and we started talking for about a half hour. And that was it. He shook my hand. He got up and that was it. He left. And he comes back a second time and he sees me down in the media meal room there, comes over, sits down next to me. And he says, I really thought a lot about what you said. And you were right. So now you're going to watch him with me again. And we watched him again. We conversed. And then he made the team, because remember, Pierre, he was borderline to make that team.
Trust me, I know.
Yeah. And he makes the team. And then, I see him the following season afterwards because he wasn't coming back there after that. And he goes, hey, thanks for your help. I'm like, wow. For Steve Yzerman to say that to me, it was one of my proudest moments. But the fact that he wanted to pick somebody's brain who's there all the time, show me how good a manager he was going to be. And that was, like you said, that was before the Tampa started and before all that. And I said, this guy's on his way, man. He's on his way to be a good manager.
So you learn that from people that are experienced hockey people. A lot of guys like the fancy suits and the slick hair, and they like all this stuff, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The real hockey guys get down and roll around in the mud.
Exactly.
They do. How I always use the term boots on the ground?
Yep.
So I can tell you right now, like, Yzerman's never told me this. He doesn't have to. His scouts tell me.
Yeah.
Like he watches ESPN Plus has been like a boondoggle for him.
Oh,
He's watching games from everywhere, all over the place. And he's been good and I'm not talking pro games. I'm talking college and junior, like live barns, a huge thing for all these people. So this is why some guys, I'm not going to say names, Jimmy, I'm not going to never be mean. But there's some guys that are imposters that are running teams. And there are other guys who really should be running teams. Because all they do is be married to the game.
Yep.
They're married to the game. The reason why this show is called the Eye Test is because we're trying to get people to go look at things that maybe they would never look at before.
Exactly.
What we're trying to do.
No, yeah. And it's great. And I mean, I'll just tell, similar situation to Yzerman and me was the other day when I'm watching the game with you, Pierre. And by the way, it was a great time. But when we're watching UMass Denver and you're just pointing out, like I said, you're just pointing out little things that I'm not necessarily going to see because I'm watching it through the lens of a reporter.
And you're a fan. You're a fan of UMass.
Yeah, but I'm a fan of the game and I'm a fan of you. So, but you opened my eyes and I love doing that. And that's why I tell you guys how much I value scouts because they are just such an asset, not just for my job, just to learn more about the game and to appreciate it more and to see it through their eyes and the little intangibles that they're looking for in a player makes me understand that player more. So that's what I love about that.
It was so cool the other day when we were together and I loved how many people were coming up to say, Jimmy, way to go, UMass. It was really cool. I could see you were in your element there in Springfield. It was awesome. So proud of you. Larry Plow.
Oh, great to see Larry.
Larry was sitting at the back of the rink, right, Jimmy? Mm-hmm. Like no hyperbole. Second to last row, maybe, or maybe the last row. He was sitting by himself.
Mm-hmm.
He was digesting the games. He was digesting the players. And when you said, "Hey, Pierre, I went and talked to Larry. I'd like to come over and see him," I went over and we had the best talk.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was so good. And we just talked about family, players, and trends.
Yep. And
I was like so happy. I was like, this is better than anything.
Isn't it?
Awesome. Yeah, so good. It was so good. He's such a gentleman. I don't know if his son really does a good job. Steven does a really good job for Calgary. I'm going to try to find a way to get this to him because I want him to know like how much that meant to me. And I know how much it meant to you when you talked to me.
Yeah. I hung with the cup because of Larry. The first time I ever met Stanley.
Larry doesn't need to be working.
No.
He doesn't trust me. He's addicted to the game, man. He loves the game.
Yep.
Can't be around those guys enough. Like he's not a pretender.
No.
He's a real guy.
No. And I'll tell you, so he's gone from one Armstrong to the other, from Doug Armstrong in St. Louis, and now he's working in Arizona. And I'm telling you, Pierre, what a smart pickup by Billy to just bring him on and just pick from that wealth of hockey knowledge that he has and that experience. That will help the Coyotes. And that's a team I know people can poo-poo on the whole rink thing all they want, and will they move? And we can go to the cows come home about all the mess that they're in. But they are building a good plethora, a good stable of players right now, Pierre, and they are on the right track on the ice at least. And I feel like that doesn't get spoken about enough when it comes to the media and the fans, is that they are doing some great things with the actual hockey product.
Boy, I really like what you just said. I was a big Logan Cooley guy. I didn't think he was going to be a better player than Slavkovsky, and I'll stick with that.
Yep.
But where Arizona took him, I think 3 overall, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
Big fan. I'm watching him evolve, and I'm seeing Clayton Keller, and I'm seeing him, and I'm starting to see what's going on there. And I'm going, you know what? These guys are going to be good. They're not that far. Here's a name that most hockey fans, you don't see Arizona play a lot.
Yep.
J.J. Moser's a really good defenseman. He's a really good defenseman.
I think actually, Pierre, if I'm not mistaken, we had someone in our comments section earlier this season talk about him and say that, I hope my team goes out and can pry him away, but they're not there. He's not going anywhere. He is a really good defenseman. Really good player.
So that's just one example. Kesselring is a kid from out east here. He's a really good – that was a good pickup, like a good pickup. So they're starting to – you can see how their build is going. You can see it. And they've got
a ton of picks this year as well. I mean,
the only thing, Jimmy, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer.
Yep.
This draft it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. The top part of it's real good.
Right.
But not everybody's, going to have a top part of the draft to pick from.
Right.
If you tell me tomorrow, Pierre, you could trade all your picks and we'll just give you one. If I could get Celebrini, I would do it.
Oh, yeah. Imagine him in Arizona.
I'm just ooh. So, how we were talking about, we were a little unsure about everything in San Jose?
Yep.
If they get Celebrini, that changes their direction, their trajectory for sure.
For sure.
It doesn't mean that.
But that's an if. It's not a guarantee.
Not a guarantee. They still got work to do. A lot of work to do. If Chicago gets Celebrini, now they just got to get some guys that can play D.
I hear you. Pierre, one thing I want to do, so we don't forget, I want to talk about this day in hockey history from our a good friend, Bob Organ. And, Bob, he does a great job just getting all this stuff up. But I'm going to intertwine it with a story that somebody else sent me, a great little hockey tidbit. And I want to know, well, let's go there first. And I'll pull up, as I'm telling you about this story, I'll pull up Bob's list of this day in hockey history. So I get a message on Twitter, Pierre, from a follower. We go back and forth and talk hockey there, Stephen McClure. And he did some research and wrote a piece on a guy named Ewan the Elk Cartwright. You ever hear him?
No.
So apparently this guy was a really big prospect coming out of WHL. He was undrafted in the it's about 76.
That's way before my time.
Okay, so Sinden finds out about him, scouts him, wants him, he invites him to camp. And they're really excited. They think they've got a steal here. The guy had like 100 points in the WHL, big kid, like 6'2", 2 something. So he gets to camp. And I guess in that off season, he had picked up a hobby off the ice of like constructing banjo guitars. And this just became his passion. This was his off ice passion. And so he's at training camp. And on an off day, he decides he's going to show one of the trainers how he does it, how he puts these things together. And as he's trying to slice into the wood, he slices off 3 of his fingers.
Oh, my gosh.
And his career's over. And that's it. And they called him the Elk because I guess when he was in WHL and he would score a goal, he would go over to the bench and he'd pull out an elk earrings to put on his head and he'd skate around with a cape and an elk horns. So this guy was off the wall, but Sinden thought he hit the jackpot. He's like, this guy's going to be the steal. He's going to put us over the edge. And at the same time, I guess they were also trying to get Steve Larmer. Did you know about that?
No.
Trying to get him. Yeah. But anyhow, it was a hilarious story. It's a good tidbit. Made me think of Bob Borgen. So that's why I bring it up. And let's go to Bob Borgen right now in this day. Now, Pierre, we got to wonder, though, how many of these are real and how many might be an April Fool's joke, considering the day. It's because it is April Fool's.
Yeah.
Has anyone got you today?
No, I've had a crazy day.
Okay.
Yeah, no, nobody's got. I've been up since really early, went to the gym, and I've been kind of busy doing a lot of stuff today.
Damn. I should have shut up because I probably could have got you because you've had such a crazy day, but I wouldn't do that to you on air.
No, you sound like a wounded animal, Jimmy.
All right, let's look at this day in history. Let's go to April 1st, 2003. Here's a player that I always liked when he played, and really you don't hear much about him anymore. Anaheim, Steve Thomas. Remember him, Pierre?
Wait a second. Yeah, how could you not have heard about him? Stevie Thomas was as tough as there was. He was a tremendous winger. I've had so many good talks with Stevie over the years. You know, his first real coaching foray was with Steve Yzerman down in Tampa. He was an assistant coach there. But no, I'm a big fan of Stumpy. He's I'll tell you one thing. I remember we played Islanders. Al Arbor was coaching. I was coaching Hartford. We played them in a neutral site exhibition game in Old Miami Arena before the Miami or Florida Panthers, I guess you'd call them the Miami Panthers, but before the Florida Panthers, and he had a heck of a fight with Randy Cunneyworth. Oh boy, that was a really good fight. And
I loved him.
Yeah, well, Cunny was an amazing guy to coach, and Stevie Thomas was an amazing guy. I got to really know Stevie when he was in Toronto, and I was living and working there. I have so much respect for him.
He was all grit. So on this day in 2003, Stevie Thomas became the first player. He's playing for the Anaheim Ducks at the time. Of course, that was the team that went on a little run there. Became the first player in NHL history to get a penalty shot goal and an overtime goal in the same game, when he scored at 4:07 of overtime in a 2-1 win at Nashville. It was also his 13th career overtime goal, which at the time was an NHL record. So thanks to Bob Borgen for that.
That's really cool. By the way, that was a team that was coached by Mike Babcock.
That's right.
It's a good story. Gordon Miller and I were there to do a game in January. I'm not kidding you. Okay. Gordon and I walk in the Anaheim dressing room, and Paul Correa's there, and he looks at us and he says, "What the bleep are you two guys doing here? We're here to broadcast your game." He goes, "Have you guys looked at the standings?" They booked these games in the summer, Paulie. And so they went on a run.
Yep.
They went on a run. And when you think about it, you know, they beat Dallas, they beat Minnesota. They went on a run. They lose.
They beat the conference final that year too.
Minnesota was a broken stick. I'm trying to think. It was a broken stick on I think it was Cliff Roning's stick broke at the offensive blue line for Minnesota. And I think Niedermeyer went down on a breakaway, not Scott, Robbie. And I'm pretty sure I know Robbie scored if it was him, but I'm 99% sure it was Robbie. And he scored, and they go to the final, and they lose to Pat Burns and the New Jersey Devils. But if you think about like the torture test that Babcock, when he was coaching Anaheim, had to go through some of the coaches that he was coaching against, it was a murderer's row. Jacques Lemaire was coaching Minnesota then.
I know.
You know,
and Pierre,
in the final,
they went 7 games in that final. Remember that?
Yeah.
And trivia there too. The last player to win the Conn Smythe from the losing team was in that series.
Yeah, JS. Don't worry, I know that one. I was doing it. I know that one. JS was great in that. Oh my gosh, that playoff run, he was phenomenal. He was so good. But what I remember the most, that January, Gordon and I were in there, and Korea goes, says, "What the F are you guys doing?"
Well, you guys picked a good team to check out when they were out of it, because they went on the run. That was a great run for the Anaheim Ducks. And like you said, Mike Babcock as well.
And then 07, then the Magic is in 07. They win in 07.
And Pierre, Minnesota was kind of a Cinderella team in that playoff too, right? Didn't they knock off Colorado?
They did. And, you know, it was impressive. Well, Jacques Lemaire is such a good coach. Jimmy, like, I'm just telling you, there are a lot of guys. I'd say Pat Quinn was in my vintage when I coached. Quinn was really good. obviously Bowman was really good. Keenan was really good. Like there were some guys that Lemaire was like, he was up there. He was up there. Burns was in Toronto, the late Pat Burns, when I was in Hartford. He was in Montreal when I was in Pittsburgh. Really respect Pat. Pat was one of those guys where you'd see me look all angry, and you see him. Sometimes we'd have breakfast and float. So for whatever reason, we'd always be in the same cities a couple times. Go have breakfast or go have a beer or whatever. And he looked disheveled. He looked awful. I go, how's everything going, Pat? Never been happier. Never been more happy. He just loved being in the fray. Pat loved being in the fray. Pat Burns just loved it. I was talking to Dougie Gilmore about that at Mario's fantasy camp. Just Pat loved being in the fray, man. It was amazing. Well, all those guys, I don't want to say it's a bygone era, but when you think about the star power that was coaching back then, and go look at the names.
Yep.
It really was. Like you had to be ready every night to coach.
Yeah.
You really had to be ready every night.
He did. And I was so happy for him when he won that cup finally.
You should have seen the celebration.
So close so many times, right?
Many times. And then he wins it. And we're there, and Bobby McKenzie, and Gordon.
Was you with TSN then?
We were there. We were with TSN. Okay. So we were all working it. And what I remember the most is after we have Pat come on the podium with us and we're doing a live shot with him. Come on. We go in his office. And we just had so much fun. It was great.
Good for him. Good for him. I wonder, Pierre.
Wins and loses, but I was so happy for Pat that night.
Yeah, he was great. He was great. Well, you know what? I wonder if back in the day, all those games on the road and all those trips he's taken, Pat Burns could have used our sponsor, Factor, if they were around then, Pierre. Yeah. Those delicious meals, Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals, make eating better every day easy. Head to factormeals.com/iTest50 and use the code iTest50 to get 50% off. Again, that's factormeals.com, iTest50, and use the code iTest50 to get 50% off. And now, I don't know if we can put Pat Burns and Manscaped in the same.
He trimmed his mustache, so I guess you can do that with Pat Burns.
All right, maybe Burns, he would have been a big fan of Manscaped, I guess. So, hey, this season, it's spring now. April is here. All right. Make sure to groom your carpets and the drapes with the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. Go to manscaped.com and use the code iTest for 20% off and free shipping. Again, go to manscaped.com and use the code iTest for 20% off and free shipping. Let's get over to the questions, Pierre, because they're piling up over there. And
this has been so much fun, this show. I've had a lot of good memories just because of the way you've prodded me.
Oh, good.
It's been good.
That's what we're here for, man. That's why I love it.
Burnsy, really good memories. Really good thought. Yeah, one time Maxime Lapierre was playing for Montreal, and I didn't like some of the shenanigans he was doing. I was broadcasting then, and I really like Max. And Max and I have had some really good talks since then. So he and Guillaume Latendresse do a lot of good stuff on French TV, by the way. They really do. And so I was like, that's unacceptable. Max plays for the Montreal Canadiens. Like, you can't act like that.
Yeah.
Don't do, he was kind of starting trouble, and then he was skating away. He wouldn't get involved physically. And I think one of the nights was in Boston.
Okay.
I happened to be doing a game. And some of the media, the Francophone media went after me pretty good for that. And Burnsy was doing his daily radio show in Montreal, and he backed me up 100%. He goes, right. I would never have tolerated that along those lines. I'm kind of paraphrasing. Yeah. And then he called me up and he says, I just want you to know you didn't say anything wrong, and I got your back on this. And I was like, Pat, that means so much to me. Thank you. Awesome. Really, that was really good. Like, he knew the difference between right and wrong. He did. Maybe because he was a police officer. Yeah. He knew the difference.
But he was blunt, Pierre, but in a respectful way.
I like the blunt. I'd rather have somebody blunt than try to, hey, Jimmy, you're such a nice guy, and I think
I don't want to.
And then you turn your back on.
Exactly.
Well, the guy say, you know what? I don't like you. You stink. Buzz off.
Yeah. But no, even if you tell me, Pierre, you've told me before, son, hey, listen, you need to stop this. You need to do this better. I'd rather you say that than dance around it. And who knows, maybe I keep doing the wrong thing or something that's not helping me. And then somebody else starts picking it up, or then it goes on social media. I'd rather people be blunt and to the point. Don't beat around the bush with me. Like, after so many years in this business, our skin is thick enough, So
I couldn't be more proud to be your partner. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you, my friend.
Get some questions. Get some questions.
All right, let's do it. Let's do this. What do we got for questions today? Jeffrey B. Dallas has been finding their groove lately, winning their last 7 games, despite Ottinger and Wedgwood having 900 save percentages up to this point. Do you think this is sustainable going into the playoffs?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the scary thing, that they've been doing that and Ottinger hasn't been at his best. That's scary.
Jimmy, do you remember when Tanev got traded there? And I said, this is going to be huge for them, because not just because everybody knew Tanev was good, because it put Miro Heiskanen back on the left side.
Exactly.
And look at Miro's playing.
Oh, yeah.
Really well. And
still one of the most underrated defensemen.
And look at Ryan Suter was drafted in the 03 draft. He's not a young guy anymore. He's been at it a long time. So this allows Ryan Suter, rather than play 24 to 26, now he's down at 19 to 21, minutes. It's better. Yep. Everything's better. So Jimmy, okay, we were talking about Yzerman before, having the Yzerman Love Fest. Jimmy knows part of that food chain.
Exactly.
Jimmy knows part of the Jimmy Devellano, Kenny Holland, Scotty Bowman food chain, Steve Yzerman food chain. That makes a difference, Jimmy.
It really does.
It's about team building, and Jimmy Nell's really good at
it too.
And they got a coach there, DeBoer. We've talked. Was it last week or the week?
Yeah,
before?
we were both saying.
Was it last week?
Yeah, it was Friday.
Friday. Pete's so good. He's so good.
He really is.
He's a really good coach.
He does a good job wherever he goes. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's good. I mean, what I like about Pete, he's no nonsense.
Yep. All right. What do we got next? Vincent Royale. Happy Easter, gentlemen. Truly appreciate your coverage of college hockey. This long-form format lets both of you show your passion and knowledge. Which bottom 6 NHL team will win more next year?
Okay. So
we were just talking about one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Arizona could have maybe 6-7 more wins at least, maybe 10. Who knows? That may be saying a little too much, but I think they'll improve. I think the team that we have talked about numerous times improving next year and challenging for a playoff spot, Pierre, and that's the Montreal Canadiens. I think they're borderline playoff next year at worst.
So I'm going to pick 2. I don't dispute what you said about Arizona, because I think you're right on about them. I'm going to say Ottawa.
Okay.
I'm going to say Montreal.
Yep.
Those are the 2 that I think can be better. Now a lot of pressure on new management in Ottawa. First, it's going to be, do they keep the coaching staff? Do they bring in a new coaching staff? So that's going to be interesting to watch how that plays out. And then what do they do to address maybe some needs on defense, and how badly hurt is Josh Norris? So those are my questions about Ottawa. And Montreal, you got to get Kirby Dach back. I think you got to play 11 forwards and 7D when Lane Hudson signs with you, because I'm pretty sure he's going to sign there. And how do they make out in the draft and free agency? So I think those are the 2 teams. Who's that? Yzerman on line 1 for you?
Sorry about that. The ringer's usually off. No, one thing I want to ask you, though, Pierre, we were just talking about Celebrini earlier. How much could he affect the answer to that question if he, let's say he goes to Chicago, okay, and now you've got him and Bedard in Chicago. How much could he swing them into that conversation?
He could, but they don't defend well enough yet. So that's going to be the conundrum for them. Now, that doesn't mean they can't address that in the offseason, because they can. They really can. But they've got some issues that they've got to deal with in terms of stopping the opposition from scoring. And they have the coaching. The one thing I'll say, this isn't a coaching issue. Luke Richardson's they have a good staff. Luke Richardson's a really good coach.
He is.
And his staff is outstanding. So I have no issue. They just need more players on the back end in particular.
All right, next question. Chris Damaris. Hey, guys, great podcast. Huge Blue Shirts fan. Wow, we haven't had many Rangers fans here. Huge Blue Shirts fan here. 2 questions for you guys. Are the Rangers surreal, and who comes out of the lineup when and if Cheadle and Wheeler come back?
I don't think Philip Hedl will be back this year. I could be wrong, but I'd be surprised. And I don't know about Blake either. Blake's injury was pretty devastating. So I don't want to speculate about the injured players, but part of the question that I like, Jimmy, are the Rangers for real? And the answer is yes, I believe they are.
Yeah.
I really like their depth on defense. I like the way they're bringing in younger guys to try to help that defense. Fox and Trouba 1-2 on the right side is spectacular. Lindgren and Keandre Miller 1-2 on the left side, really good. I think they've done a lot of good things there. And
the coaching.
The coach.
Lavi's
So Laviolette, Housley, Pekka, and Danny Muse, that's a really good staff.
Yep.
And don't forget Allaire, the goalie coach. So that staff's elite. It's not a little good. It's really good. And we'll go back to it. We don't want to be redundant, but we have to say it. I think a turning point for the staff in terms of credibility with the players is how they dealt with the Matt Rempe stuff after the Sunday in Columbus. I think it really changed internally how they were perceived as a staff in a good way, not a bad way.
For sure. And before we move on from the Rangers, want to say congratulations to Jonathan Quick on becoming the all-time winningest American goalie in the NHL.
Where did he go to school?
UMass Amherst. It was an honor to wear his jersey the other day at the tap there, and that was a good time.
You should have. I wish I should. You know what? I make a lot of mistakes, but this is one that I really made a mistake on. When you pulled Jonathan's jersey on, I should have taken a picture of your face.
I had that grin, huh?
Christmas, getting your favorite toy. It was awesome to see. It was really good.
I said I felt like I was getting drafted because I had the suit on underneath.
Oh, I know. It was good. It was really good.
All right, next question. Mike, really been enjoying the Frozen Four. Is there an undrafted player in the tournament that can be a solid NHL? There's
a lot, Mike. No, Mike, There are a lot. I don't want to just throw my weight behind one or two guys. It would be too much. So I think what we should do, Jimmy, and I'll do this for you and I'll get it to you. I think we should come up with a list. Mm-hmm. You can maybe get the guys in Montreal to put it up on the screen for us.
Cool.
But I think that'd probably be the best way to address that. But the answer is there are undrafted players and players that have been drafted but have become free agents that are playing that are good players and can help teams. They're also, I think there were 149 or 142 players when the tournament started that actually were NHL draft picks. So
yeah,
a lot of good players.
It's got to be a record, man. I feel like that's unbelievable.
So I talked to a bunch of college coaches this morning about the weekend's games. Mm-hmm. And the one thing they said, because today is the beginning of free agency day in college for the portal and for the undergraduates. And they were also, a couple of them were saying, and I thought it was a good point, college hockey would be better because older guys are going to be staying. So the 99s and the 2000s, guys that should be moving along to the American League or the East Coast or go over to Europe, they're going to stay in college. Some, not all of them, but some of them. So the pool of players is so much greater, and so there'll be less young ones playing, and sometimes that's bad too, obviously, but there'll be more older players playing longer, and that will help the quality of play.
I'm with you on that. All right, next question. We got anything? Or are we done? Oh, there we go. Do you think Colin Graft and or Jacob?
I don't think Colin. Yeah, I don't think Colin.
Won't.
I think Jacob's got a chance. Full disclosure, he's my son's teammate in Penticton. He's been a great player. I've been watching him for a long time. I'm a big fan of both players. They're different. You know, Quillen's got an engine that doesn't quit. He's probably 5'11", 205 pounds, but he's got an engine that doesn't quit. Graf is a little bit more like Corey Perry. He's sneaky. Offensively, he's not as mean-spirited as Corey Perry, but he can sift. He can really score. So they're different players. I don't think Graf will be going to Boston, though.
No. From what I'm told, just from someone pretty close to him, Boston is not a front runner right now. However, they are a front runner for Quillen. So
there you go.
We'll keep an eye on that. All right, next question. Alex Ivanovsky. Pierre, what do you think the Penguins should do with their first-round pick if it is in the later part of the top 10? Do you send it to San Jose? Do you take it and lose the first-round pick next year?
I'd have to see what my amateur guys were doing. That's a really good question. It's a fair question. I'm not trying to dodge. I'd have to talk to see what my amateur guys were doing. If anybody was going to slip, they can't miss. and they know that internally. You know, Kyle Dubas knows that. Our friend Kevin Stevens knows that.
Yep.
Jason Spezza knows that. They know in Pittsburgh they can't miss. Because if they miss, that's a problem.
Yeah, this is a big one for them.
Yeah, that's one. By the way, I forget the email or the texter's name, but that was a really appropriate question because
Jared. Oh no, excuse me. No, that was Alex Evanovsky. Sorry,
Alex. That's a really important thing, I think, for their management team. That's something they have to deal with internally.
For sure. All right, we'll take 3 more here. What do we got? Samuel Matty. What do you guys think of Blues prospect Dylan Peterson from BU? Senior year, I feel like he can develop into a solid bottom 6 forward in the league one day. I'd agree.
We agree. Big. He can skate. His skating's really improved too. First time I saw him play was a summer tournament in Buffalo back in 2011, where he's just a big guy that couldn't skate, but he was big, and you could see he had a future. He's also gotten a lot tougher, Jimmy. Like, he's pushed the pace physically as well. So I could definitely see that. Yeah. No, I could definitely see that being – and he's always had really good hands.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see him being a bottom 6 guy. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to the next one. Justin LeBron, why is this happening with the Flyers? Well, we went over that, Justin.
They're out of gas, Justin. They're out of gas.
They're out of gas. That's just it.
Today's huge. I mean, they play at home against the Islanders, and tonight.
Yep.
It's a huge game.
It's a big one. All right. I see Evan McLaren, our good friend there, had a question about Pittsburgh. Since we've been on a Pittsburgh theme, let's close it there. I may have missed it, but have you guys talked about the goaltending situation in Pittsburgh? Looks like Nedeljkovic is moving into the 1A spot. Makes me wonder what Dubas will do in the offseason. It's a great observation, Evan. And I think that is another interesting aspect of that team to watch in the offseason. Both Pierre and I had heard Jarry's name leading into the deadline. It was out there at times. So you wonder if there were talks concerning him and, leading into the deadline, that they put those on the shelf and then revisit in the offseason. That is definitely going to be something to keep an eye on, is how Dubas handles that goaltending.
I agree. It's a big part of it because one of the things we're finding out, good goaltending can cover up a lot of blemishes. Oh, yeah. It's like really good mascara, which I don't have to wear as much when I'm working with you.
Good stuff.
Take the last question. I know there's one more.
All right. Yeah, there's one more. Let's do it. What has to happen for the Rangers to win the cup? I don't know.
How come you're not calling out his handle? I don't know what that bar is.
He doesn't have a handle. He just has a price tag. I hope that's not spam, guys. Who knows? We'll call him spam for now. Spam wants to happen. What needs to happen for the Rangers? Shesterkin's going to be Shesterkin. That's the bottom line.
No, that's part of it. I think another part of it is staying healthy.
Yep.
I think if you stay
healthy. Nice. It's a donation to the channel. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really nice. Thank you very much, whoever decided.
Yeah, next time put your name so we can thank you. We appreciate it.
That's an awesome thing. We're really grateful for that. Jimmy, I think they got to stay healthy. That's the number one thing for them. Last year I think they just got caught in a rut and there was dysfunction.
Yeah.
I think there were issues and Gerard Gallant's a really good coach. He is. Yep. But there were issues with Gerard and his staff and upper management. There just were. I mean, it's been well documented. It's not Jimmy and Pierre saying it. It's just you can't win that way. I know people say, oh, yeah, but Keenan and Neil Smith in 1994. Listen, there were no players playing for the Rangers last year that looked like Mark Messier or Brian Leach or Sergei Zubov. I'm sorry. There weren't. Yeah. That was a different Ranger team in 94. Keenan did a phenomenal job with Colin Campbell and Dick Todd, I should say. They did a fantastic job as a staff. Yeah. But all that being said, Jimmy, they had really good players too. They had a wagon of players.
For sure. Well, Pierre, before we go I wanted to mention this too. Sad news coming from the Bruins today. I'm not sure if you saw it, but former Bruin Dave Forbes has passed away. I want to send our thoughts to his family, friends, and former teammates as well. Dave Forbes passes away today, so that's too bad. Did you ever see him play?
I did.
Yeah.
I play a lot against the Montreal Canadiens.
He was. I remember his name from my grandfather. So it's
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. Well, listen, another great episode here. We're working on some good guests. We'll have more news on that tomorrow. Working on some big guests for the rest of the week, and we will again get On Campus Friday going on Friday. Good week to kind of really, before it gets crazy and all the hype starts up leading into the Frozen Four. We're going to try and get a good college guest for you on Friday and tee up the Frozen Four there. We're looking forward to that. I want to thank the production crew there in Montreal. We're thinking of you guys, and also thank all of you in the viewers section there and the listeners as well. And Pierre, one more thing.
Yep. Say hi to our good buddy Tony Granato out there
That's
in
right.
Madison, Wisconsin. And I want to say hi to Rosa as well. Rosa, keep kicking. Keep kicking.
We're thinking of you. All right. So he's Pierre McGuire. I'm Jimmy Murphy. This has been another edition of the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.